Hello, and welcome back to another chapter of Heroes and Hermits by Algonaver on AO3. Chapter 3. Only scars remain of who I was. Chasing criminals was a normal day in the pro hero's job, even for interns, who were just today allowed to go home early. The sense of duty lingered in them. Bakugo was first to react when an alarmed cry sounded down the street on their left. His vicious grin, the bloodthirsty one, came back with renewed longing for battle. He rushed there without hesitation, with Midoriya and Todoroki following right after. No amount of tiredness would stop them from performing their duties, young and eager for action. Jumping from wall to wall, Izuku could not contain his excitement. With Endeavor not being around, they could focus on individual performance rather than trying to outspeed him to get work done on their own. They were in a densely populated area, however, and one of the pro heroes on Dirty might show up. It would be cool, yes, to work with another pro. But Izuku wanted to get his own chance to practice both his abilities and teamwork. He narrowly dodged a stray bike wheel that almost flew at him as he landed on a wider opening between buildings. Todoroki even used his flames to melt some garbage in their way, because there was a literal hurricane of loose items and junk that flew into the walls on high speed. Izuku was ready to engage against a possible villain's quirk, when he saw red feathers slashing through all the mess, and their owner appearing from rooftops in a rush. Hawk's face was obscured by his goggles, but to Izuku, his expression looked unusually intense, and that made him worry. They went after him, of course, with Hawk lowering a bit in the air and shouting, "Search for a dude with wings and a red sweater. He might be dangerous. Escaped from a hospital? Seems delusional." And then flying away. First thing they did was climb higher to survey the search area. Bakugo's explosive flying must have woken up everyone around the neighborhood while they scouted the streets. Izuku saw hawks fly by a couple times, but not the person they were looking for. Possibly the escapee's wings were injured. Izuku presumed. Would explain why he was in the hospital in the first place, although why would he escape from there? Possible villain or delusional civilian, like Hawks had said? Then, thought Izuku, it would be possible that the scared person was hiding, sitting quietly in a corner while they searched. This would be a much more suitable behavior for a person who was not actively trying to escape. He might not be in the right state of mind and could really hurt someone by accident, or himself. So this was more of a search and rescue mission then. Oh, Kachan will love this for sure. Izuku received a ping from Todoroki with a location coordinates attached. Just a building away. Trees were planted in a corner of a parking lot, made studying the place from above inconvenient. As Izuku jumped down, he heard Bakugo closing in as well, so Izuku made note of his position before turning his attention to Todoroki, who was apprehending their runaway guy by pinning him to the ground, carefully managing not to step on the massive colorful wings that were frozen in a half-lowered state. Not literally frozen, by a quirk, because Todoroki saw their pitiful condition and did his best not to hurt them more, though strangely the man did not seem to struggle against being held. Listen, hey, don't press down so much. Hey! That's my oil gland! Get your hands off! Demanded the cop man, but he grew calmer as he turned his head around to face Izuku. Oh, hi there! Hi? Izuku was surprised that the guy they were chasing sounded so casual. His tone was calm. He was weirdly weirdly relaxed despite being pinned down. A few seconds later, before either Midoriya or Todoroki could ask anything, Hawks landed in front of their captive, Bakugo too, leaving scorch marks on the asphalt as he slid across the parking lot and stopped to meter away. And his face clearly portrayed everything he thought at the moment. Izuku would swear he could predict almost everything his classmate would say before he opened his mouth. What the hell is this? I didn't know we were chasing some middle schooler around. What a waste of time, said Bakugo with a scowl. Look at this pathetic piece of shit. Why were you even after him? He asked as he looked at Hawks. Dude, first of all, began the stranger, watch your language, he huffed. Second, thanks for the compliment. I had no idea I could pass for someone that young, although I outgrew my baby feathers decades ago. So points to you for recapturing me so quickly, kid, said their captive, trying to look behind at Todoroki. Are you a superhero or something? That solidified an idea that this guy was a foreigner. He looked the part and used non-Japanese term, and yet he sounded like a native. A quirk, perhaps? But then Izuku thought his quirk was an obvious bird mutation. His parrot-like wings and legs could be a part of a larger quirk, then. He probably can imitate voices like a parrot would. This idea made Izuku even more curious. Who was this guy? What did he do if he was being chased by pro hero Hawks just because he ran away from a hospital? Yes, we are pro heroes, and you are under arrest, answered Todoroki calmly like he always did. Well, not so much under arrest, but you are detained for questioning. Don't try anything funny again, because I will hunt you down. Hawk's tone was just as calm and serious, so unlike his usual casual, easygoing persona, his posture appeared to be relaxed, but it's probably because Todoroki was holding the captive. Alright then, I've got a couple minutes to spare. Go on, play your hero role. There was something off about this detention. Everyone apart from Bakugo was awfully pacified. It made Izuku feel uncertain. I was the one who found you and made sure you were put into the care of medical professionals. Hawks kneeled down, his wings folding behind his back, and then you woke up and bolted like you were about to be killed. You were screaming your lungs out so much I thought you were a nutcase. And now look at you, so calm and talkative. Yeah, I can be like that sometimes, said the man with a smirk. What's your name then? Green. Nice to meet you. Hawks. And these are Deku, the green one, Shoto, the one holding you, and Bakugo, the loud one. That caused Bakugo to cry out again in protest. Title is a work in process, damn it. Just under a filler until the final one will be created. So don't get used to it, you idiots. He lifted his head and huffed, trying to show his displeasure with his whole body. Bakugo, that's literally your name, said Todoroki, only to receive another shout as an answer. And it is a bit easier than King Explosion Murder. Or the Lord variant, added Izuku, who took a step away from Bakugo to stand closer to where Hawks was sitting. Oh, so these are pseudonyms for work. Kind of boring, but oh well, it's your business. I prefer funnier ones personally. They have a bit more of oomph to them, you know? And it's hilarious to shout something ridiculous in the middle of a crisis. Green was spread out like a cat on the floor, and his wings whined to lay at his sides. Some of his longer feathers were now covering Midoriya's feet. It seemed like he was not bothered at all by this position, and it made Hawk suspect that something was up. Izuku could read the tension on his no longer smiling face. It might be that this green guy no longer had the strength to fight or try to run. His injury looked awful. Even worse now after a chase through the streets. Pieces of leather that were sent flying earlier were stuck in his feathers, and they could cause him bleeding. Hawks decided to check his wings for himself, inching forward and touching a fragment of a DVD disc jammed in there. Green shuddered and his wing pulled away in a snap, as if he was burned. His eyes met with Hawk's, fear burning in his eyes, despite Green's best attempt to hide it. Hawks could feel it, but to keep everything civil, he smiled, calmly lifting a hand away from the wing and waving. There's a piece of debris stuck in there. I was trying to help. Sorry for not asking. It was unprofessional of me. I was too focused on my own perspective. I know how painful it is on my own. Nah, it's fine. Green shook his head, and his wings were lifted a bit. They've carried me through some rough times. It's their job, after all. I'll claim them later. This was not convincing enough for Hawks. He turned his eyes to Todoroki and gestured for him to get away. There was some hesitation on the student's side. He obviously did not want to risk Green escaping. When he stepped aside, Green's wings shook in relief and stretched behind him. Red and blue feathers floated down from them and settled on the asphalt below. Bright contrast against the dark ground. It was dark around here. The nearest lamppost was at least a few meters away, but despite that, Green's feathers shined in the dark, colors as vibrant as it was day out. Izuku felt like he was in a fairy tale, as if he was looking at a phoenix in a magical movie, except this reality, and probably the work of Green's quirk. Still, Izuku could admire the prettiness of those feathers. Then Green suddenly rolled to the side. His wings swung in an arch and smacked the students in their faces. For a moment they were stunned. Just a second. And Green was gone. Midoriya panicked and instinctively turned around, only to see Green standing high on a lamppost. It was in a completely different direction from the one he dashed to. How in the world did he get there? Todoroki was the only one who was not watching Green. His eyes were caught on Hawks, whose face was covered in fluffy wing down. Green must have slashed him with a wing across the face to stun him. Green, don't make stupid decisions. We want to help you recover and heal. And you're making this a bigger mess than it has to be. Calm down, okay? Calm down. And go back to the hospital with me. Hawks was walking closer to him, slowly with lowered hands. Hawks, pal, the only reason I let the boy catch me is because I wanted to see his funky hair close up. Green was gingerly balancing on one foot, swinging the other one in the air. His expression was hard to see due to poor lighting, but everyone could feel a smile in his voice. Sick hairstyle, by the way. It made Todoroki finally look at him and nod silently. What else could he do? Well, Bakugo had a different idea. With a blast from his palms, he took off, nearly slammed into Green, who dodged at the last moment. This prompted others to give chase as well, but Green already flew high up, too high for students to reach. The final stretch of the chase was on Hawks, high in the sky where only wings could reliably carry you. Green's speed and agility were surprising for a civilian, and he proved to be a hard target to catch. But Hawks was a pro. These skies were his domain, and Green will submit, sooner or later. Hawks had to separate a couple of his feathers to try and hook Green like a fish with them. Only one of them managed to get him, while the other one was dodged by a lucky dive Green performed. Agility was Hawks' pride. He wasn't going to be outmatched by some tethered chicken. He was a bird of prey, strong and fast. Green stood no chance. He mentally tugged his feathers that had been lodged into the other flyer to unbalance Green. But it did little to nothing. A feather from Hawks' wing could lift an average person with ease, yet Green barely twitched. He knew that Green wasn't happy, so it must be work of all those muscles Hawks felt under his clothes while carrying him to the ambulance. Green's wings were too damaged to safely carry him on a stretcher back then. But just a few hours later, it was as if he was completely fine, flying at mind-blowing speed. Hawks had to admit, he was starting to drag behind. It could be adrenaline, and if it was, then soon enough Green will succumb to his injuries and exhaustion. Hawks just needed to keep him in sight. Chasing a wounded person so high in the sky was incredibly dangerous, and Hawks could only hope that he would be able to catch Green on time should he start falling. Just a few more minutes, a little while longer. Then, Green faltered in his flight, descending a few meters with a shaken wing. Finally, this gave Hawks enough time to dive at him and catch his sweater by the elbow. It was an air fight, hard to keep balance and hard to hold his struggling opponents. They were quickly losing altitude. Hawks wanted to squeeze Green and take control of their flight by forcing his wings against his back. He had to act fast. Green had other plans, though. Continuing to fight back with impressive vigor and strength, his body did not make obvious at first sight. All that power was hiding behind that oversized sweater, a wolf in sheep's clothing, or a dragon in chicken's feathers. The guy was very slippery. Hawks noted with frustrated groan as his grip on Green's shoulders weakened. Green twisted in the air, thrashing to get free. It was hard to hold on to him. Green's wings suddenly lunged upwards, and Hawks found himself being turned upside down. For a moment, he caught sight of Green's snarling face. Hawks couldn't keep balance with his back turned to the ground. They were falling, and it was all his mind kept focusing on. Falling to their death. Fast approaching death. So fast. So soon. Hawks couldn't let himself die. His mind, despite all his training, despite all his professionalism and self-control, turned to instinct. Calgo felt the fear of death in his very soul, and only fear drove him to let go of Green and start struggling away from him. He could swear he heard Green laugh, but it didn't matter, because Green let him go because Hawks felt the current under his wings, and he could fly. He could feel his body regain balance. With his balance came clarity. His heart was racing, still drowning his body in fear, but Hawks was back in control of himself. For Green, that moment of primal fear was exactly what he aimed for. So he slipped away. While Hawks was balancing himself in the air to turn himself the right way up, in that time Green was already gone. Must have dived into the streets, that flying rat. Hawks already hated that guy. Green was very, very happy that he could hide his wings, at least temporarily, with a magical glamour. He dove under a bus station seat and basically played dead. Good thing there was no one around to see him like this. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Wonderful. Just wonderful. He was dirty, hungry, and injured. Probably looked very kickable. Hawks was so kind to him. Perhaps he looked so sad and pathetic. The hospital? No way was he going back there. That place smelled of chemicals and was too white and loud. They wanted to catch him and lock him up in a cage. It was not on Hermitcraft. Heck, not even in any of the worlds he knew. They wanted him dead. They were looking for him. No one was his friend here. Taking a deep breath, Green nestled into his wings in search of warmth, comfort. This place was weird and alien, and he was alone here. Where did Mumbo disappear to? Why was he here but not his friend? He hoped that Mumbo and the others were safe. Scar was smiling in his last memory, and Cleo was laughing at something, and Green missed his home oh so badly now. He clung to that memory in a desperate attempt to hold off tears. No use crying if no one would hear him. No one important. Some time passed. He felt it in his chilled bones and swollen bruises. He couldn't feel his wings, only their unbearable heaviness that came out of nowhere. If his wings weren't visible, it didn't mean they were gone, hidden in a separate plane of existence, but they still hung from his back like a dead weight. Spending his energy on concealing them did mean his stamina was being drained even faster, which was not ideal in his current state. He had to find shelter and food, while somehow invading those who were after his skin. What would happen to him if he was caught? Better not think about it. Stick to positive thoughts. His escape. A little victory for him. He also found out some curious information on local superheroes. Those chasing him were teenagers, and a slightly older teenager. How old were they? Certainly not old enough for that kind of job. Usually superhero stuff, kids fighting the great evil bad guy while our adults argued about politics and other crap, like in the comics. A classic setup for a story, and Green was now stuck in the middle of it. Right. Where there were heroes, there was usually a corrupt government body that enabled kids to be risking their lives. It's a tale as old as time. Green knew thousands of them. Not only from comics and shows. Crappy governments were everywhere, and he despised the government. He was tolerable on Hermitcraft, where everyone knew a limit to it. Where it was a fun time. A game. Here in this strange new world, on the other hand, under no circumstances should he allow himself to be caught. Not a chance. Not in this stinky place. Ugh. He needed to get going if he was going to ever overcome this situation and get out alive. The back of his base won't finish itself. Rolling out from below the bench, Green stood up and shook off some leather that was stuck to him. He used the sleeve to wipe the sweat from his head, and then used the trimmed talons he had on his hand to comb through his hair. He would have to find a claw trimmer somewhere soon, or he might scratch himself on accident. That would be an ouch moment. He preferred to cut his talons to a dull tip to avoid hurting himself and others, but having them grow sharp would be a great close combat advantage if danger ever snuck close to him. For now, Green needed to learn where the heck he was. He could worry about his manicure after he found some food. The streets were brightly lit and relatively empty. He could see a couple of men standing near a bar. Judging by a sign above the door, it was a narrow street. He was lucky to have hidden in such a quiet corner of the city, because he saw how loud and full it actually was. Flying above it for brief moments, such a big city, he never saw anything like it, not during MCC or in his short travels. Entirely new place, new world, where he somehow ended up. Lifting his arm, he tugged away the sleeve to reveal his communicator. This sturdy thing served him well ever since Exuma gave it to him after his old one was taken. Turning it on, he scrolled through the menu and opened the main chat. It stuttered, but opened after a few minutes of lag. No messages, new or old. All he saw were notifications, hundreds of them appearing constantly. There were names and messages of people joining the world, and there were names of messages of people dying. Fujikawa Haruko died. Catherine Luster died while giving birth to player. Jonathan Ruff was shot by Utah Ruff using Glock 19. Soda died, withered away. Pan Yaleen died. Sophia Luster joined the game. That's a lot. They flew by so fast, Green could barely read them. And that was with his comm lagging a bit and slowing down. Just how big was this server? How many people were joining and dying? He closed the chat and opened the server member list. The screen was black for a second. 2 seconds. and his comm just couldn't handle it, crashing and entering a reboot, leaving Green to stare in horror at the screen of code. No way his comm just crashed. No way. Zuma said it was just like his old one, a moderator communicator with extra processing power, and it still crashed. According to the error code he saw on screen, it was a memory issue, data exceeding capacity. It told him everything about the server size without actually showing him any numbers. All of this felt unreal. How could any server sustain that many people? How could its admin hold everything together with players constantly joining and dying? Even multiple admins wouldn't be able to do it, thought Korean. This server was chaotic and open to anyone to just walk in. He'd known anarchy servers were a thing, but even they had a reasonable player limit. He thought to try something. Once the reboot was over, Green took a deep breath and went into work. Opening his communicator again, he opened one of the long unused panels. He had no right to use it, obviously, but it would allow him to get an answer. If Tango was allowed to mess with code, so was Green, right? X would understand. /time set 1000. He felt no resistance. No immediate punishment or shift in the atmosphere that would announce the presence of an admin. The air remained calm. Green had to close his eyes as light suddenly came into existence all around him. The sun was high in the sky now, and Green felt its warm rays thaw the chills on his skin. However, he got a tiny chill from all the screaming down the street, where people were running out of the bar and shouting, windows opening in the buildings around him as people leaned out of them to look outside. Maybe they did not want to skip the night for some reason. Well, there would always be next night. It was important for Green for it to be day. He could use some more time to get away from dangerous unlit areas. He had no weapons on him right now, and it would be tricky to fight mobs. Getting ready to leave, he was stopped by a guy waving at him and coming closer. Green held back a grimace when he smelled a whole bouquet of alcohol from this man. Hey, you guy, am I tripping? Or, is it morning already? I swear yeah, was dark excuse me a second ago? He asked with a broken voice, and his face looked like he had just seen a ghost. Poor fellow, must feel like hell. And now this shock came to strike him, and gave Green an important insight. They weren't used to skipping the night. Interesting. Then it must be relatively safe in the city, considering how well lit it was, and how this drunk had no gear to protect himself, except cool-looking spikes on his shoulders, but they were dulled like Green's talons. Probably to not scratch anyone. They were not suited for battle. I would say it looks more like noon, dear sir. You should go home and rest. Look at yourself. Wouldn't it be nice to get some quality sleep right now? Said Green politely. He faked a yawn and stretched his arms above his head. He smiled and turned away. I have to go too. Good to you, good fellow gentlemen. The next hour he spent awkwardly speed walking in alarmed crowds of people who were panicking about the time change. To Green, it was the norm. Edub sometimes skipped the night for them on Hermitcraft, if everyone agreed to it. Building in the daylight was easier, as was working with redstone. There would always be the next night when someone would rest enough before getting back to work, and the server-wide data plugin ensured the Hermits wouldn't feel too exhausted by the lack of sleep. Sure, it was understandable that on a server this large, so large, Green couldn't even put a number for player count. Agreeing on anything would be next to impossible, to say the least. Why was it so overcrowded then? Just walking around, Green saw thousands upon thousands of people, and he was glad to see it wasn't one of those human-only servers. One more minor victory on his side. It was simply more comfortable to be in a place where you wouldn't be persecuted on how you look. Maybe Green would be judged on who he was, that is, if anyone found out. They won't, so he had no worries here. His glamour always worked wonders, and avians were generally well respected and loved as a species. Green just needed to be his old avian self. Yep, simple enough. His wandering eventually brought him to a beach. A beautiful sunny beach with grass and some nice tree shade to hide in. So Green sat down and let his wings back out into this layer of reality, stretching and shaking off excessive tension that built up in his muscles. Moving his wings was painful, and he mostly used his shoulders to move them. Hawks was right. They looked rough. Before he could scout for food, they needed preening. Doing it on his own was a challenge. It had been a while since he had done it on his own. His friends picked up that skill fairly quickly, and he no longer had to suffer with stretching and turning and trying to use a stick to get feathers that were too far for him to reach, because wings like these were not meant to be cared for their owner. And Green still had memories, vague visions, of his family doing it for him. He couldn't recall their faces. Not that he cared to. This stuff was too sappy for. This stuff was for a sappy backstory in case he wanted to write a biography of his life. His real family. The one that cared for him now. That was important now. Not some long dead folks he didn't remember. No, he shouldn't be thinking about that. He was miserable enough. Trying to clean himself in the most excruciating way possible. Stay positive, Green. Do what you do best. To get rid of mental pressure and the remaining dirt, he stripped and plunged into the water. His wings needed help from his arms to be stretched and bent to make sure water got between every single feather. Hours would be needed to dry them fully, but after his sky battle with hawks, he doubted any flying would be safe, both due to risk of being caught and because he doubted his wings could fly anymore. Yes, it hurt to admit, and yes, he was terrified to the point of his throat itching at every breath, barely contained tears threatening to break free. Green didn't have strength to cry. He barely had the energy to stand. Some unbelievable luck allowed him to dry a bit and get dressed without any embarrassing moments of strangers walking in on him. Hermits were quite open with each other in every aspect of their day-to-day life, so he was used to the comfort of not having to bring a swimsuit every time he wanted to swim or sunbathe outside. Of course, back in Season 6, he wasn't used to this relaxed clothing policy. But hey, as years went on, he grew close to his new flock. Seeing a neighbor's naked butt once in a while on a particularly sunny day became part of the scenery. Naturally, when Pearl and Gem joined in Season 8, Green had a chance to laugh at Pearl's culture shock upon her encounter with Hermits at the beach phenomena. Green wondered if Pearl was alright, wherever she was. He hoped she was back on Hermitcraft, safe and sound. He was no longer on Hermitcraft, though, and apparently it was the only place where he could relax. Be green? Just green. He did his best not to tear up. Clear and warm, Green opened his communicator again and stared at it. There must be something he could do to get back to Hermitcraft. He could, in theory, just fly upwards until he break through the world barrier and wander about in the ants until he would find a needle in a haystack. Staying here would allow him to trace back his steps and possibly find clues on how to get home. And what if the other hermits were here as well? He wasn't alone in his last moments on Hermitcraft. His memory of it was foggy, but not gone. If he got here by teleportation magic, then it was one thing. If he got here by an open portal or a wormhole to change things. These ripples in space left a recognizable mark, a portal having a permanent impact on the world. Hawk said he fell from the sky. Then it would be where he'll start his search. Staring at a blank menu screen got boring quickly. He put his comb away and changed his position, laying down on the grass. It wasn't as green as the grass back home, probably because of all that nasty smelling gas in the air. Tasting the grass revealed it was the same, making Green's tongue tingly. Why did he even thought of trying to eat grass? His brain was surprising its owner sometimes. Sure, grass. Grass was the answer to his problem. A very funny brain. Green turned his gaze to the horizon. Shiny water was splashing in the waves against the beach. It sounded muffling the city noise in the background. Green felt lost and hungry in this world. And yet, it was rather beautiful. Unique in its own way. And that is the end of chapter 3.